Welcome to Composerscape. My name is Jess Hendricks, and in this episode, episode 5, I'll be talking about my music for Martian Manhunter and the animation I created to accompany it in Blender 3D. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned. Okay, so let's dive right in. I do these videos as kind of a way to both. I think some people might find it interesting to see my approach to music composition and how I would approach film music composition. My interpretation of some of these characters, both musically and in this case using animation. So hopefully it's an inspiration to other composers that might watch this, and even if you don't do film music. I have lots of ideas for using different things, either from existing film music or even from the larger classical and art music repertoire, modern contemporary orchestral music. One of the effects I use here is the introduction, which the introduction is a kind of a slow burn. It's a build, and it's just lots of different textures, less than it just being specific melody, and it's just building up to the main idea, this kind of driving rhythmic thing that happens later. So I start with these very low percussion sounds, which honestly you probably can't even hear until you turn up the volume. As usual, these things always sound really good with the volume loud, because I have lots of things going on. And then I start stacking. I got strings that are building this kind of interesting chord here, and they start arco, and then they switch to tremolo, and it kind of builds this like tense effect. And then I do one of my favorite tricks. I probably even do this too much, is I'll have, these brass swells, generally low brass, and the low brass plays one chord, and then the horns come in higher, but on a different chord, only a half step away. And it's kind of this effect here. Which I think is really kind of cool, because normally, like if you sat down at a piano and played those two chords together, they would clash that close. But when you do it this way, I just find it to be a really interesting. Then the chords are more textural as opposed to functional, for a little music theory term. And then to add even more texture, as I've said in previous videos, is I really love to add the synthesizers in with a traditional orchestral sound, especially in this, which is a science fiction type score. It's John Jones, the alien from Mars. So I have this these synthesizers come in, and at this point it's just these two. I never know why it doesn't give you that little play button all the time. I'm sure someone knows. Put it in solo mode here. So we have this thing that's called Vibrant, and that is massive, which is excuse me, I've been using this one for a long time, and what it does here, and I'm just holding it. And I get that effect with, geez, I gotta remember, I made this thing a long time ago. That's an LFO. It's an LFO, a low frequency oscillator, and it's set to sync, so it works in the tempo. You get all sorts of neat effects with it, but I use it in a very basic way as kind of like a drone. And then another interesting synthesizer, which it's not really a synthesizer, it's actually, believe it or not, it's a sample library by East West Quantum Leap called Goliath, and in it they have a whole subset of sounds called Storm Drone. And this, I use this sound here, and what it is it's a morph sound. So when you move the mod wheel up and down, it morphs between, totally different sounds. And that's the sound I use here. And then, it has other sounds like this one is a even more dramatic one. I wanted it to be subtle for this, but this one's called Sand and Locusts. You use that for a Dune soundtrack. Hans Zimmer, if you're listening and you haven't finished yet, this is a good one. So you start low. You can really hear the four different, the high sound. There's the second way morph, the third, and the bottom, which is just a low drone. I use that in a lot of my compositions because it's very subtle. You don't really hear it as much in the grand scheme of things, but it adds this subtle texture underneath. See, this is the mod wheel. Now in the animation that I did after I made the music, I conceived the whole animation is building as well. So we have it's kind of like us, the viewer, is going to Mars to witness the end of this this conflict, this genocide that the white Martians commit against the green Martians. So as the music's building, I just keep approaching. You were approaching the planet, now you're over the planet hovering. There's some white Martian ships going by. I can tell the viewer what's happening. And then we're introduced to this little city I built, and there's John Jones. Now, John Jones, I built him originally I built him in ZBrush. I got hooked on that when I saw the guy who designed the original Steppenwolf, which we're now getting to see in the movie. He used ZBrush, and I was like, wow, if he can do all that crazy stuff, an amateur like me should be able to make something pretty cool. And yes, I mean, I'm no professional 3D artist. I am definitely a rookie. So what I did is I built him in ZBrush, which makes them with so many millions of polygons. I would really be interested to see how they do that in movies when they export, from something like ZBrush. Because if it's millions of polys and you want to animate it, it can be really difficult to work with. So I put that in Blender, and it's really cool. Oh, I have to use the mouse for Blender. It's really cool. Here he is up here floating. This cape, this cape is a cloth simulation. And before I started this video, I went ahead and wound that up. You can see it. Here he is over here. So I animate this whole guy all by himself and then imported him in the scene. That way I'm not trying to work with this complicated animation in the actual scene itself. And actually, what this does is it skips the frames, so it shows it in real time. If I tried to do it where it's not skipping the frames, it would be real slow, but you can see this cape animation is so cool. I tried to make the cape in my own way, like similar to like Man of Steel's cape. It's this nice long cape, and it's got a little weight to it. It's not like light cloth, so you'll see it doesn't flip around too much. I know the animators and the artists in Man of Steel and other movies like that, they probably spend a lot of time with manual animation to make it flutter and flow, and that takes a lot of work. So then I bring him in here, and you can see him, oh look, that didn't work, and you can see him kind of hovering there. And then I use a bunch of different camera angles, and this is an old school movie trick that you can use in CG, and it's kind of obvious, but I thought it was fun, like an 80s movie trick. That's a flat plane out there, and with a flat image of an explosion that you can see through, so it looks like the explosion's happening on Mars. But I didn't want to spend the render time to build my own explosion. That's kind of complicated. And the cool thing too, for those people that are watching this for the Blender stuff, that's just one instance of these little Martian ships, the white Martian ships flying by, that I just repeat over and over. So I could have these big fleets of these things going around. Here is my Man of Steel homage of the ships approaching and the sunset in the background. The glowing eyes. So what I tried to do here, so the animation builds to this point, and once it gets here in this introduction, this slow introduction before it starts, the main theme is it's all approaching John Jones, shows him seeing that there's just no other option. He's going to have to flee the planet. I like this shot with the sun in the background there. It's really cool. I actually rendered some stills of that. So he jumps in his spaceship and flies away. And yeah, I know John Jones could probably just fly, but I thought it'd be cool. And actually, that was the whole impetus of all of this. Before I wrote the music and anything, I was making his symbol. I was just doing 3D renderings of the symbols for the Snyder Cut poster contest. And as I was making his symbol, I realized, hey, this looks like a spaceship. So I eventually just turned it into a spaceship. Oh yeah, I better save that. Yes. Oh, here. I can't remember when I saved these things. I have it saved like right after I did a render. So now it's going to try and pull all this stuff up. So there's his spaceship there, using the fancy EV physical starlight add-on. And I did I get a kick out of this. I was playing with it, and you can do two suns now. It's not like that in the movie because obviously our solar system only has one sun. All right, so then it all builds to this, and once he takes off, then I'm doing my action music, so the animation reflected that. So I wrote this originally, and it's very simple thematically, is that it's just these swell chords, and they build and modulate their way to the very end. Just kind of like him rising to the occasion here and escaping, and lots of different facial expressions for him. He's doing maneuvers now. And then he's going to leave the atmosphere. I think is, if I did it, I think I timed the animation in the atmosphere to the modulation of the music. Yeah. So that was, since I did the animation second, I planned that all out, and then I knew I had to fill up this much time animating for that modulation. And what I did is I based it on one of the ideas I read in one of his origin stories, that he just was mysteriously transported to Earth. So I figure in his spaceship, this wormhole opens up. This was a fun effect to make too. And he flies into this thing, kind of not really expecting it. I released this video right after the announcement for the Justice League movie, so I threw a thanks in there for that. So that's how I worked that. I composed the music and then created that animation. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. So that's it for the Exodus of John Jones. I will also have a link in the description, and I think if I can at the end of this video, so you can watch the whole thing and tell me what you think. Bye bye everyone.